Today, my name is Robert Galstian, and I'd like to welcome you to the third in our Artists in Conversation series. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to submit your questions by using the Q&A function in your console. Without further delay, Catalina Guirado-cheadle became one of Britain's top models and an it girl in the 90s. In 1996, she began hosting some of the UK's most popular and award-winning TV and reality shows. She moved to Los Angeles in 2004, where she became a media entrepreneur. She also helped create one of the first music streaming TV sites backed by heavyweights in the industry, as well as launching her own boutique PR company focused on the arts. Her father, Juan Antonio Guirado, the famed Spanish artist, passed away in 2010, 10 years ago actually, right now. Catalina quickly took charge of his estate and sought to maintain his legacy amongst the leading Spanish modernists. In the years since, she has documented his extensive catalog and worked on exhibitions of his work in the US and Europe. These have included a major solo exhibition at the Coral Gables Museum during Art Basel Miami Beach. Juan Antonio Guirado was recently featured in a group exhibition alongside Spanish heavyweights Picasso, Moreau, and Tapies in Parallel Visionaries at the University of Jaen, Spain. Thank you for joining us today. Whenever I see your father's work, I'm always drawn to it as it's very unique and yet very moving. It touches on psychology, and yet there's always optimism and hope. Can you tell us more about him as a person and how this has influenced his work?
Yes, he was obviously, as an artist, they're very deep people, and he was very spiritual. This is him in Australia. This is his studio in Sydney, Australia, and I think this photo was taken around 68. So this was a time, it was during the summer of love. People were experimenting with LSD, they were experimenting with marijuana, and I think this kind of comes out through the art because there was a huge awakening and shift in consciousness, and people wanted to learn something else and open their third eye, which we shall get back to with the paintings. When he was in Australia, he discovered this new technique of painting. He wanted to have more. He wanted his own style of painting and be one of the masters. So one day he got very angry and he threw some rags of turpentine at the canvas. And then he said this whole world awakened before him. He saw the visions. And I think, this and probably this time of the 60s, I'm not quite sure how the visions were induced, but he was very much channeling art and seeing things going into his mind to paint. He was very environmental. He was politically, enraged at times, but he's an artist and he's Spanish. What can I say?
Yes. So how did living in Australia affect his perspective and work? I mean, obviously he came into a whole new body of work.
Yeah, he before that he was painting very classical paintings, murals. He was trained in the classical style of art. And then it was mainly browns. He painted a lot of browns. And I think this is also to do with his mindset. You can tell when he's depressed and when he's in a dark place, the paintings are very dark. Now, when in Australia, he suddenly saw color, and he was really encouraged by this kind of spirituality of the land and the country. And so this is when he got into Eastern philosophy and the Veda, and he started painting with blues and yellows and a whole range of array of colors. And he started this whole kind of slightly surrealist, abstract surrealism, and experimenting with this color for the first time ever.
Very interesting. So, during his lifetime, this is a collage of some of the press that he received from the various art publications of the day. And then I know when you took over the estate after his death, these are some of the clippings that you found. Tell us about that. How was it like discovering this part of his life?
It was interesting because we were a strange family to start off with. My mother and I moved back to London when I was 7. So when he passed away and I had to go through the studio, I found this huge book of clippings. Now, having grown up in art studios and around galleries and with art dealers my whole life to a certain point, I kind of got cut out of this rest of it, and I didn't realize quite how acclaimed and how successful he had been. I found press clippings from 1968 through to 2009, just before he died. So he was working constantly as an artist through these periods. He never stopped being an artist. He's not just someone that would come back to it. This is a proper working artist, and someone that was really revered and respected and got a lot of press in his career.
I love these titles. I mean, Essentialism in Art, his expositions, the 21st Century Artist. But one that resonates with me is on the bottom left, third from the left, an artist with an eye on the future. He's such a visionary, and that leads us into this painting called The Third Eye, that just happens to be behind you as well too.
Yes,
it is. Talk to us about this. This is a work on paper, I believe, right?
It is. It's an acrylic on paper, and it's very rare painting of his style. I think this is one of his experimental styles, but I think it's a really beautiful piece. This is The Third Eye, as I mentioned. He's known as the artist who paints through the third eye. And the third eye is the eye that is here, and it goes through consciousness. And I love this piece, and that's why I put it into this fundraiser, is because it's very positive. You can look at it as an eye with a pupil, and we're seeing through. And the orange and yellows are the colors of the chakras, and they're very uplifting. And so what I want to do is there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of tunnels in my father's work. So this could be a tunnel, a light, with the white, the yellow, pale yellow at the center. That's a light at the end of the tunnel after all this awful time that we're going through right now. It's like a sun arising. It's just a beautiful, positive work, and this is a rare for him because he went through, as an artist, depths of depression to Europa.
And for those of you watching this on a small device, whether it's your mobile or your iPad, you can enlarge the screen to look at the painting closer. I do want to mention that before we get ahead of ourselves. And once again, I think this is also the cover photo. The cover piece that I use for the sale as well, because it's, as you said, it's very uplifting and it's very positive, and it shows optimism as well. And this kind of leads us to, your father passed away 10 years ago in 2010, and you quickly jumped into the estate, basically trying to get a handle on things to see what's going on, and put some structure around it, and start cataloging the works that hadn't been cataloged and pick up where he left off. But one of the dreams he had that had never been fulfilled was having an exhibition here in California, and that's one thing you quickly set out to do, is curate a show. And in 2011, we did just that on La Cienega here in West Hollywood, and this was the Out of Darkness Comes Light exhibition. That was a VIP event that we invited local trustees, patrons, collectors, as well as celebrities. So talk to us about this exhibition and what it meant to you and what it would have meant to your father.
Well, I mean, I have you to thank for this, Robert, for introducing me to the Gallery Los Angeles Art Association, with kind enough to lend the space just for one night between shows. So, and this is the first time I'd done an art show myself. I curated it. I wanted to show exactly that. That's why I curated paintings that showed the darkness of humanity through all the way around, that touches on everything, tunnels of light you can see here, and then we end up with the most spiritual painting from the angels. So it's like a really beautiful full circle. And I think I used my rent money to buy the frames for this. That's how serious I was. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to invest time, and we're going to put the money in, and hopefully something sells. And I think this also encouraged me because the reaction from everybody was there. We're like, who is this artist? And I just didn't know what to expect. And having the reaction from people in the art world here, and that actually just made me go, okay, this is something I cannot put aside. This is really important to continue this legacy and to bring it to a new range of collectors, to people who've never seen the work before, because it's obviously really good. I mean, I don't have to sell the art. The art, when you have something that is technically and brilliant and mindful, I don't have a hard job. It's just a matter of getting it in front of people and showing people and letting them decide for themselves.
And I agree with you on that because the reaction that evening was overwhelmingly, who is this artist? Why don't I know about him? Why isn't he on my radar? And that goes to, I think, unfortunately, the art world is very fragmented and in geographies. So we don't really see a lot of artists from different parts of the world, unfortunately. But you're right, the work is brilliant. It resonated with people. But more importantly, it goes back to him being a visionary and in the way he was painting.
Yes, exactly. He it's very timely for now, and that's what I discovered, in that the works that he was painting in the 70s and 80s were about the environment, were about his concerns for the destruction of mankind, man's greed, their search for spirituality. That's why the tunnels of light, the third eye, there's always a search for spirituality, and a light at the end of the tunnel. Yet he was very concerned that we are going to destroy the planet. And look at what's going on now. Look at the times we're in. So
Yeah.
this is something from the set. That's why in the news piece it was like an artist with an eye on the future, the 21st century artist. They recognized then that that Guirado was painting revolutionary artwork.
I just got a question from Anonymous asking, what was your father's background? Did he come from a family of artists?
No, he came from a large family of 8, and they were very poor from Jaen in Andalusia. And so he originally he tried to be a bullfighter. He trained to be a bullfighter because in Spain that was something that you became very successful, a bit of a rock star kind of thing at that time. Luckily, he hated killing the bull and he couldn't do it. So we're good. Being animal people, I'm very, very happy about that.
Yes.
But he was also a talented artist, so he decided to make his career in art. And he was a muralist, and then he traveled the world.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So the one image I do want to show is of the Consul General of Spain, who was here that evening, and he said he never felt more proud of being a Spaniard that evening because everybody who attended was just really enamored with your father's work.
Yeah, he was lovely. They sponsored the event and came on board, and it was very kind. I really appreciated him being there. And yeah, this is part of what I like to be able to do, is present Spanish art to people that don't know it, because it's not always recognized so much. I mean, you've got the greats, but recently, it's kind of taken a bit of a dip. And the Spanish are very proud of their artists. They're very proud of their culture. And it goes from, when we do exhibitions in Spain, the cleaners will come around and they'll all look at it. It's not a society thing. It's not like, only the higher levels of society are interested in art. Everybody loves art and is appreciative of it.
And that's very true. So going back to what you just said a few minutes ago in terms of you want to do this also to see what the reaction would be and whether or not you should commit your life to working with the estate and achieving all the things you've achieved with it. So this really gave you the opportunity to go back and do additional research on your father, put things together, as well as reach out to his collector base. And that led to a fantastic exhibition a couple of years later in Madrid at the, and please forgive me for my pronunciation, but for the Pons Foundation. I don't speak Spanish, for the record. So, but this was a lovely exhibition in central Madrid at a fantastic foundation that you helped launch. And I think this was quite a few galleries at the exhibition.
Yes, this was with my curator of the estate, Wanda von Briesky, who we were lucky enough to have. I got benefactors to help with this, and Wanda and I worked very closely for many years on provenance, and she was really, really important to creating this whole exhibition. And she came up with after the exhibition Out of Darkness Comes Light. We've always used that as for the titles, something like that. So this was rebirth through the third eye, and there was different sections of art. We could make this a lot larger. There was about 45 pieces in this. So you've got the spirituality, you've got environmentalism, you've got you got the light, the tunnels. We could put a much larger body of work into this exhibition. It was really exciting. And we were very lucky. Some of my close friends are members of the Spanish royal family, so they came along as well. It was a fantastic night. Actually, the James Bond premiere was the same night, and we had a better turnout at our event. What
Wow,
can I say?
better than James Bond.
Better than James Bond, yeah.
And once again, for those who joined in a few minutes late, feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A function. We just got a question, Kat, from another anonymous, asking who your father's influences were.
So he was very fan of so a lot of Spanish artists, Velázquez, Goya, and then El Greco, and some of his early paintings are very similar. There's a kind of touch of mannerism in them that El Greco had in his later period of painting, and also Kandinsky and Tapias. He was a philosopher, and he read a lot about the philosophy of art, and these Tapias particularly was of interest to him.
Yeah. Now, I know from, as we're close personal friends, I know a bit more of your father than most of the attendees are. But one thing I do want to stress is your father was always intellectually very curious.
Mm.
He was always, not just with artists, but with philosophers, writers, thinkers, spiritualists, even yogi for that matter. And in this image here, he's with his good friend, a Spanish poet, Pablo Alcalde.
Exactly. Yeah, they were very good friends. The painting is the cover of the book of poetry that was actually dedicated to my father and also to Andalusia. And I think the people of Andalusia, the south of Spain, were very passionate, and they call it the duende. It's a spirit, and so if you're from Andalusia, there's always a connection to the mountains and to the south of Spain. And this is a book of poetry about it. And my father was also very close friends with a very revered yogi called Ramiro Calle, and also Elio Clemente, another artist. And they were like they're like the terrible foursome that used to hang out.
Yeah.
Talk philosophy and drink wine.
How fun. So, so your father, I guess, was asked to paint the cover?
Yeah, I think this was a painting, and then what he did was he actually afterwards added a portrait. I believe that would be in pen over the actual painting that started off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a print that your father made from the painting during his lifetime.
Yes. Now these are actually on sale as part of the fundraiser. There's a collection of 5 of them, and these were created by my father himself. In the 80s, so they're actually on the wall behind me. I've got 2 framed. They look really
very nice.
They're a nice size to have as a collection, and I think we've got them at a really affordable price. But I don't think there was a big run, maybe 40 of each. So I think we're doing, they're there as a really good price for what they are. They're beautiful. And there's a lot of detail in them. They're quite fun because you can examine them. The more you look into them, the more you see.
No, exactly. That's the beauty of the work. Now, one thing that both you and I are environmentalists, and your father was as well too. So you were invited by ARCO, which is the leading art fair in Spain, and I believe the most widely attended art fair in the world, at least before COVID-19. And you were invited to do an installation on environmentalism. And this is a photo of that installation in central Madrid as part of the ARCO VIP program. And I just love how you've not just put the work on the wall, but you've also superimposed text beneath the works. But it's also installed in such a way where it's more of a comfortable lounge or a gathering place or a meeting point, as opposed to a sterile white cube or a museum gallery. It's a place to be lived in, to sit in, to think, to ponder, discuss, very much as your father would with his friends over a glass of wine.
I like that. I think that's a very correct analysis of it. Wanda von Briesky again came up with we we had to work out how to mount the pieces, and Wanda worked really hard to do this with along with Laura Revuelta, who is the art critic and head editor, chief editor of ABC Culture in Spain, which is a major publication, and they worked very hard together on this too. We worked alongside Greenpeace and some environmental groups as part of this whole project. So yeah, we were very, very proud of that. It worked out very well. And the actual text is written by my father. It's the grand experiment, and it's basically saying we're running out of time as human beings and as a human race, and this is an experiment, and there's going to be a point, which is very poignant today, that this will go one way or the other, and we're either going to live or we're going to die. So we have to choose the direction that we're going in. And this is a prose that he wrote and added onto a 10-minute DVD kind of curation to music, which I actually have on the website guirado-cheadle.com, and it's on YouTube as well. So if you want to check that out, you may.
One thing I want to point out is your father also painted on canvas as well.
Yes,
So
yes.
the painting here on the left is on canvas.
It is.
It's from the family collection. And the work on the right is a work on paper. It's acrylic on paper.
That's actually on board, I think.
Is it on board?
Yeah, that's on, yeah. Yeah, he worked mainly his earlier works. These are earlier works. These are from the 70s and 80s, and they were mainly on canvas and board. And then he started experimenting with photographic paper as well. So
Yeah, it's fantastic. So this was a huge success, which kind of led into being invited by the Museum of Coral Gables.
correct.
Shortly thereafter to do a solo exhibition for your father. And since we mentioned Vanda's name several times now, here she is with you
Yeah.
at the entrance of that exhibition, Beyond Landscape. And I don't know if Vanda's on the webcast right now, but if you are, hello, Vanda.
Oh.
So this was an interesting exhibition because this was a totally on your landscapes by your father.
Yeah. This was we co-curated this, and it was a really fun experience. I think this is the most fun we ever had working together. And because I'm talking about the third eye and seeing through different visions and say alternate realities, we wanted to show Spain through what could be different realities of consciousness. So you've got the classical painting here, the typical olive grove in Spain. Then the next painting, this is cast environmental as well. There's the forest fire, which we're all in California, where we've been experiencing, and of course Australia. Yeah. So this is, and then you go to the ice scape. So it's a different landscape, but all the different ways that this can happen. And then you've got a very futuristic, then you've got beautiful classic, it's very impressionistic classic Spanish landscape. So it's just all the ways you can see. Instead of just looking at something you think you see it, these are all the different visions of the same thing.
So I have a question came in, Kat, from Joey. Hi, Joey.
Hi, Joe.
He joined a little late, so she might have missed it. No, you didn't. Don't worry, but thank you for asking this. She wants to know, can you speak to how working with your father's estate and moving from, let's say, the traditional father-daughter relationship has changed your relationship with or understanding of him?
It's a really good question. Okay, so we were estranged and growing up. So apart from when I was really little, I didn't really know him. So taking this on has, and really strangely, since he passed away, I feel a closer connection with him than I did as, growing up. And my mother and people have always said, you're just like your father. And I think the more I met him over the years, I'd be like, trying to explain that I think we think the same way. And so this is actually, it's been really, really interesting. That I totally understand exactly what to do and how to work with the art. So sadly, in a way, we're closer now, but he was an artist, so they're not the easiest fathers. You can be a great artist, but it doesn't mean you're a great father, with no disrespect to my father. But I think most people would actually resonate with that if they know.
So when you were young, did you spend time with him in the studio, or was the
Yeah,
studio his place? You just going alone?
most of the time he'd send me out, but I would probably come and annoy him for a while and get given some paper, and I remember watching him paint. But he liked to be alone when he worked.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, the nice thing with the Coral Gables Museum was the programming around the exhibition, and this was at one of the events.
yeah,
You were highlighting the virtual reality or the VR that you had developed, which I personally witnessed. And if anyone gets a chance to see it, it is so well worth it. It was brilliantly done. You enter the world of Guirado. It's
yeah.
just amazing.
This was brilliant. It was a land. There was they are an LA-based virtual reality company, and they wanted to use some art, and they thought that my father's work would be perfect, which it was. And you are surrounded by the painting, so people found it very spiritual because you get sucked through tunnels into other paintings, and then be totally surrounded in a kind of like heaven like experience. It's not like just looking at a lot of virtual reality in the gallery. You are in the painting. It's totally immersive, and I think that my father would love this specifically because experimenting with LSD and cannabis and stuff, you're getting in mind with the paintings. This is the actual experience. You are in the art. So it was brilliant. So yeah, a really great project to be involved in.
I have another question from Pietro. Hi, Pietro. Beside the artworks, does the estate comprise also an archive? Notes, sketchbooks, diaries, correspondence? And if so, what are your plans for that in terms of publications, placing the archive in a museum, library, etc.?
Yes. Okay. Good question. There are. I do have what you just mentioned as well, of course, and then also paintbrushes, easels, books. There are catalogs, everything that is going to go. What I'm planning to do, and I'm in talks with the cultural department in Jaen, in the province of Jaen, as well as the mayor. We've started this conversation, and hopefully we can. We got interrupted by the COVID, unfortunately. Is I wish to create a Guirado Foundation, and it would be an international art platform where it will also have the collection of archival. It will contain the archives, the majority of work. I will be donating some art to the foundation, and also inviting other artists and creating a really interesting program for Spain and also internationally.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I do know this exhibition as well too was timed with another one with one of our personal favorite artists, um, Carlos Cruz Diaz,
As well.
which was absolutely brilliant. And it was just a wonderful experience going to this museum in Coral Gables. It was a nice escape from the fairs
Yes.
to
Yeah.
to a space of tranquility.
I agree, and it was what's really interesting. Yes, he's one of my favorites. I always get very excited when I see his work, and it was such an honor to be on the same kind of bill, so to say, as Chris Diaz. And even though the works are so different, but his colors and the way he works, there's I think the mindset. If you go beyond what he does and how he creates these beautiful colors and works.
And almost as if it was like a crazy thing to do, but concurrently, or maybe a month apart, you had the homecoming exhibition for your father in Jaen
Yeah, it was
at the
crazy.
university, and but not just an exhibition, but you were alongside Miro, Picasso, Tapies, and works were lent from the Reina Sofia Museum, including your father's works that are in their collection.
Yeah, it was really exciting. The University of Jaén was celebrating the 25th anniversary, and what we were invited. I basically I donated the work to join the collection of the Cesario Rodriguez Aguilera Foundation, he was a very famous judge in the 30s in Spain, and he was best friends with Miro, with Dali, everyone. So he has this incredible collection of work which he left to the University of Jaén. Now, ironically, when we go to interrealism, which is the style of art that my father favored to interpret his artworks, it turns out that Cesario Rodriguez Aguilera was one of the founders of this school of thought, which was taking surrealism into a new depth, and expanding it and being free thinking, along with Fellini, the Italian film director. So it's as if the painting was always meant to be in this collection alongside the Masters of Spain. And the actual curation, again, Wanda and Laura Revuelta did this amazing curation where they put the art alongside and show how, even though they're painted at different points in time and in different places, they have the same messages and the same themes. So it's an artist's view. They're all parallel visions.
It's brilliant. And going back to what you just said in answering Pietro's question, this was a painting that you donated to the foundation, I believe.
Yes, it was. Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a beautiful painting. So I think it's now part of the Cesario Foundation. So.
And once again, those of you who are watching this on a small device, namely your iPad or mobile, please feel free to expand the screen. You can see the imagery in the painting a lot better. And once again, these are brilliant paintings that are acrylic on paper or acrylic on board.
No, these are sorry, I hate to correct you here. They're actually oil.
This is oil, sorry.
Yeah.
So I have a question here from Todd. Would you explain the difference, Catalina, that you feel, if any, between showing your father's works in Europe and the United States?
I think in Europe, specifically Spain, it resonates more with the people because they understand the subject matter more, especially the landscapes, for example. And in America, what's really lovely and interesting is people are like, wow. And I've only shown, the people are really interested, but I just think there's more of a relationship when in Europe to the subject matter. But what I like here is it's introducing it to a new perspective. So, but you've got a lot of Latin people here, so they have some a connection to Spain as well.
Yeah. And one of the nice honors that your father has received, and just explain this to the group because I'm just enamored with it. I think it's fantastic.
Well, this is after the university exhibition. Our dear friend Elio Clemente, who's a very fine artist himself and was a good friend of my father, was kind enough to create this bronze bust. Now, the story behind this very quickly is this bust was given to my father. It was by another artist in Australia, and it's a portrait of my father, strangely. And this has traveled along with him all his life, was always in the studio. Unfortunately, when he died, one of his so-called friends took it and wouldn't return it to my family. So Elio was really upset about it, and he created this beautiful piece. So I suggested to the mayor of Jaen if maybe we could place this in honor of my father. And he suggested that we put it in the school that he studied in Jaen, which is Jose Nogue. And so there was a presentation last September we went, and there was a big presentation with the mayor and the news and the TV, and of celebrating Juan Antonio Guirado as the Maestro de Jaen. And it's just a huge honor. And, next steps this is how I want to start an education program with the University of Jaen, and also a foundation. So I think it's the next step that would be just the ultimate for me.
Well, that's fantastic. The questions come in just now in terms of where else in Spain did your father live and work?
Yeah, he lived all over Spain. He lived in Granada, Madrid, in Mojaca for a long period of time. He ended his life in Mojaca, in Almeria. He also traveled to Lanzarote and decided to spend a couple of years there. So you'll find his work all over Spain, which is interesting with working with galleries. I was just recently in talks with Mallorca about exhibiting there. which got delayed now, of course, as
Due to
everything.
COVID.
Yeah, it's kind of screwed everybody up. So yeah, we'll see if that can happen in a year. But yeah, he lived all over Spain.
So, Kat, his work is it's so eerily timely. Again, I just can't help but say that.
It is.
It's was he reflecting on events of the day, namely
Yeah,
social, religious, or political, or was it just? Could you talk us through that a little bit? Because
he was, well, as I mentioned before, he was very spiritual. So the spiritual side of it came from his philosophy, Eastern philosophy, Veda, yogi. And he said he was channeled when he painted. He said he just literally wiped himself and he just painted and he had visions. So a lot of the paintings we call vision paintings. He was also affected politically and by the environment and what he saw in the news. He loved nature. He loved taking walks. So there are timely pieces in the collection that are very political. There's a lot of pieces, with war, and also he was very upset by people's greed. So and how it disrupts and destructs humanity. And this is now very, very current again. So it's something that I think his paintings are timeless.
yes. So essentially, now we started off with a press collage of a sampling of press from your father's lifetime, from the 60s and 70s, and now here we are with a collage of press that you've received from reintroducing him back to the art world, as well as to a whole new generation of collectors and art patrons and lovers. And it's just, I think you've done an awful lot of work. I mean, this is all, press is essentially from leading publications throughout Europe and the United States, from the art publications as well as Vanity Fair, etc. And the folks that have seen it, as you said earlier, were basically the who's who in Spain.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the who's who. And what's great about my dad's art is, as I kind of mentioned, he had philosophers, he had yogis. I always call him the artist. The Gitanos, he had very close friends with the gypsy families in the south of Spain, who are dear friends of ours as well. So, that's where I say everybody from every level, every society appreciates this art. And I've met contemporary artists here in Los Angeles, especially in the urban scene, actually, who are like, wow, what is this? This is incredible. So it's crossing over. You would put this as post-war contemporary, maybe, abstract surrealism. Yet you've got urban artists coming into the house going, hey, what is this? This is so cool. And yeah, we've been really lucky. I mean, I had a great PR as well, great team around me. You've been, I'm very lucky. As I said, the press pick it up. It's really interesting. He's been considered an academic of academic importance in Spanish art.
No, it's very nice. I mean, it's.
I mean, there's a Picasso, a Hockney, and my father in a calendar. Yeah, nobody's heard of him. Crazy.
well, to be fair though, Kat, your father basically got sick of the art world and kind of retreated to a studio where he still created works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like many, he got disillusioned, I'd say, by the art world, which is very easy, and I think a lot of artists would understand that because I think I'm hoping Todd Williamson said the other day that it's time to mix it up, and that what's happening in the art world should change. Is going to change as COVID has really started to change, and I think it's right. It's time for artists that are working artists to start achieving the recognition and getting up to where they should be.
No, well, to be fair though, you make it sound very simple, but I know firsthand this was an awful lot of work that you did with.
Well, yeah, it is.
Professionals.
It's very difficult. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely my passion, and I really love working in the art world, and I'm born into it. So I don't think there's any escape, really. There's nothing I can do. It's my legacy. You have to embrace it.
No, and I agree, but I mean, but once again, you very early on scoped out what you inherited, and you went through and really did roll up your sleeves and hit the ground running, and then realized you need to hire some key folks to help you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so talk about that a little bit in terms of the blood, sweat, and tears in the early years, in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, because you really were slamming. I mean, it was just a lot of work.
Yeah, when my father passed, I had to, I literally walked into the studio and had to take what I could without really understanding what was in there. And I think because of everything I've done in the past, which I included, I was a PR for a while, representing artists, and having grown up around media, I have a very good knowledge of how to do events, how to do things, run things. And I studied art and history of art and textile design myself. So on the creative side, I get it. It was more about just getting my business head. So thank you to you for, you really were great in taking me under a wing and helping introduce me to people here. Um, but yeah, I was, I have wrapped more paintings now than I ever would have known. I, just from measuring, from cataloging everything myself, and then luckily, Vanda and Laura, Laura, another person came on board, Laura as well. We all sat there and we all just worked together and teamed through it. But yes, I have loved paintings. I have hung paintings. I have measured paintings. I have hustled, and maybe I should be an art agent myself.
Well, but that's not easy either. But the
No,
one,
you should know.
yeah, well, the one thing that I was surprised when I heard you talk to me about setting up an estate, and you started throwing legal words at me about trust and estates and how you were studying up on setting it up and everything. That's when I was like, wow, she's really into this.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually started giving talks. I did a talk a couple of years ago at Soho House about art estates and also virtual reality when we just did the Coral Gables Museum show, and so I've learned. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years now, so I now really have a good grip on what artists should be doing during their lifetime, because you do not want to be the heir and have to do what I did. So I think that's also something I might start working on, is working with artists to ensure that everything is perfectly catalogued and set up for if something should happen to them, to make everything very smooth and everything in place. Because if it's not, it's a terrible lot of work, and you're always unearthing something that's a problem.
No, and those are very wise words. Um, and I think quite often artists are so busy creating, they don't really have a
No,
chance to be a librarian and start cataloging things.
exactly. They don't. They really don't. And also, just the way that they keep their paintings is so important. A lot of artists just have things scattered around the studio. My father did as well. It's and then also a lot of artists don't have money to pay for someone, so that maybe there needs to be a way to help and work that out. So I'm going to get my thinking cap on that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing is a movie. This what I've had to do. I've had to negotiate with gangsters, you name it. It's all crazy.
Actually, yeah, you're right. It'll be
Yeah.
a Netflix series.
Part of the day's work of running
Yeah,
an art estate.
yeah. No, exactly. And then one thing we forgot to mention was the event we did, the launch event in London in Soho.
Yeah,
We
that's
thanked
great.
them,
Yeah.
and
That was, thank you for coming to that as well. I appreciated that. Yeah, that was that was after the LA first show Out of Darkness. So I took it to London to the Sanctum Hotel, and did a 2 week viewing there, which was really fun. We got covered by television over there, didn't we? We had several TV channels come down, and again, that was before I had any help. My husband and myself hanging them, working out how to get the lighting in there. It's everything that an art that I see everybody when they do the art expos here. All the trouble. I know it firsthand because I do it myself. It's like there's no lighting. Where do we get lighting? Running around trying to get spotlights and set it up.
Yeah.
Again, luckily, as I grew up in an art household, you can't learn this stuff. A lot of people go to art, go to Sotheby's for their education for art. You don't. You might learn the basics, but you have to live it and breathe it to really know it. And I sometimes people are quite snobby about that, but no.
Well, it's the age-old thing in terms of you learn a certain amount in school, but you learn a lot more hands-on.
Exactly, especially if you're born into something as well.
Mm.
Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting,
Mm.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. Another question has come in asking, how does the finite number of paintings affect how you decide on each step you take for the estate? And I know you have quite a lot of paintings in the estate. It's
So
it's not a small number.
no, there are paintings that are there's sketches, there's landscapes, there's different genres of artwork. So the ones that we show are mainly we call them the legacy works, and they're the intra-realist works, and they're the ones from the collection from the 60s through to say the 90s, late 90s. So they're the ones that really get shown at museums and at the art exhibitions. The others, they're actually pieces that I want to put into the foundation because they're more they're foundation works. They're the pieces that you could do a separate show at some point, but they're not the main legacy pieces. Does that answer right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope so.
No, it does. Another question's come in. Has it been a sad journey or a happy one so far?
It has been a roller coaster. It gets quite emotional at sometimes, especially I found when I have to give speeches, or especially in Spain. Oh, it makes me cry when I have to give speeches in Spain and I have problems speaking it Spanish. That's emotional. Most of the time, it's really happy, and it's emotional in that I get a sense of great pride in what. When I see the exhibition set up, paying attention and loving the work, then I have an enormous sense of pride. And I love the way it influences people and it makes people think and look at the paintings. When you have a Guirado on your wall, you have a painting within paintings within paintings. So you will never get bored of looking at this work. And different lighting affects the art in different ways because there's so many dimensions to the art that you can get lost in it days. So it's a beautiful experience.
I kind of want to end off, Kat, in terms of some exhibitions your father had in his lifetime before he pulled out of the art world, namely the Biennale in Chicago and Venice.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, that was in the 70s and he was on a roll. In the 70s, he had a great agent, and Dame Françoise Tempera, who's actually, I believe she's the head of the Museum of Malta. If she's still with us. He was in the Chicago Expo, and I think that was in 76. And I believe from our friends in Chicago telling us that was the last one they did. So he was one of 30 Spanish artists that took place in this big expo in Chicago. And then in Venice, I think it was around the same period, he won the gold medal. And there was an Italian and Spanish artist, and he won the gold medal as the Spanish. And so the Spanish, again, very proud that he, we'd gone to Venice, we'd gone to Italy, and a Spaniard had won. And the 70s were very prolific, and I think that maybe he got tired of the circuit. It's really hard to be working and doing these exhibitions, as any artist watching knows. I did 3 in pretty much 1 year, and it was exhausting. So, yeah.
But not only that, though, there's just a time and effort in preparing for it and planning it.
Yeah,
and
years in advance as well. Yeah.
And then having the work shipped and uncreated. It was just a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears. But so.
Especially when it's international and I'm in my little computer running around the world. I'm talking to everyone around the world, trying to coordinate everything. It's like, my little position there.
Yes.
But it's good. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for spending time
Thank
with
you.
us today, Catalina. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
listening in.
Yeah.
Feel free to submit any more questions you have by using the email link. And thank you again. And once again, some of the works are featured in our online exhibition in this Together for COVID-19 Relief. We are giving at least 25% of all proceeds to charities of your choice. So please check that out on our ArtNet page. Thank you again and have a good day.